Hello, and welcome back to my second channel. I'm Umberlay, and on this channel we do art. Today we're going to oil paint a painting of Mando from Disney's The Mandalorian. I was inspired to do this video based on my last video where I colored a children's coloring book and I colored in Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker. So first I had to prepare my canvas. So I applied, I think, 4 or 6 coats of gesso. I ended up with some really lumpy gesso, so I had to use tweezers to pull off any lumps. You want your gesso to be nice and smooth. That cuts down on how much sandpaper and sanding you have to do. And then I also sketched out my drawing that I then transferred onto my canvas once my canvas was prepared. You can also see me preparing some paint. It's raw umber, some burnt umber, and then a mix of raw umber and ultramarine blue, which makes them blacks. I use a painting technique that mimics what some of the old Dutch masters did, which is a technique where you put down a lot of layers of some really dark darks, and then you apply layers of color on top of that, and everything is just really thin layers, and you're going to see me do that throughout the video. So yeah, here I'm starting with that um, raw umber layer, and then I'm gonna have to let it dry, and then I start applying more and more layers, and the whole painting will start to build up from there. Now I'm applying that dark black color that I made out of the umber and ultramarine blue, and I'm using Gamsol as my solvent, and I'm using it to create very, very, very thin paint because I'm using something called fat over lean, where all of your very, very lean layers are at the bottom, and then you build up using your oils on top. I'm also sure that it looks very strange that I'm repainting areas that I've already painted, but this is how you can build very, very, very dark, dark, dark areas in a painting. And in a painting like this, where I want to be able to create very dark darks and then some very, very light highlights, this is going to work to my advantage later. Here, I'm laying out all the colors that I foresee myself using in this painting on my palette. I'm only using a tiny amount. I really don't use a lot of paint in each painting, so I've been able to stretch using the same paint that I've had for years. I started using Gamblin paint in 2009, and some of the tubes of paint I have are still the same tubes that I bought in 2009. Because of the techniques I use, I'm really able to make a tube of paint last for many, many years. And I think that's an advantage of using this painting technique. You're able to really have paint last for a long time because you're really just adding very, very, very thin layers, um, basically glazes over the layers. At this point, I'm making my last ground layer. So once this layer is done, all of the canvas will have paint on it. And then from there, I will be adding more and more oil and actual painted pigment on top. So this layer will take a little bit of time to dry because I am adding oil to this layer, but from here on out, it will be mostly oil not a whole lot of solvent. The solvent will mostly be used to clean the brushes, and maybe thin the oil slightly in this layer and the next layer. But after that, I will just be using oil and paint, or just straight paint. And that's how the technique goes. Okay, now my underlayers are dry and I'm ready to add all my details and paint Mando. So this actually took hours. This whole painting took 5 days. So yeah, it was so much fun. I really enjoyed painting him. It's really, really, really fun to watch this in kind of a uh, fast forward mode and see the painting come together. I had to ask for some advice at one point from my husband because I have a brain injury related eye injury. So my drawing and painting didn't quite line up, and it was looking a little strange. So I had to ask him for some advice, somebody who maybe sees things a little less double and a little less crooked, so that I could get him looking a little better, because I did not draw Mando at the same perspective of my reference. Yeah, we'll call it a reference because I was only kind of referencing the picture more for the lighting, not 100% for the pose. So, yeah. But this was a lot of fun to paint. He was, I mean, not the first time I've painted him. I've watercolor painted him and ink painted him. Painted him with ink is a better way to say that. So this was so much fun, and I really enjoy oil paint as a medium. So yeah, it was really nice to go in and do this with oil paint, which is my true love in painting. I also just wanted to mention that apparently my husband found it funny that I kept rotating the canvas while I was painting this, but I have a very shaky hand, and in order to paint some of the fine details, I found myself rotating the canvas to find ways to rest my wrist or my forearm. Uh, so if you're a person that also has a shaky wrist, this might work for you. Or when I'm using my larger easel, I have actually don't know what it's called, but it's like a stick to help rest your wrist on. I'm sure that's called something. It might be just called like a painter's rest or something. But I couldn't figure out how to use this setup and have something like that. So if my turning the canvas bugs you, trust me, I don't do it with some large canvas. Just a little setup like this. I've really found it difficult to find a way to rest my wrist some way so that I actually could find some way to paint small details without just having all these really wibbly wobbly lines. And now we reach the part of the video where I have to put in Mando's second shoulder because I forgot it somehow to add it to begin with. So I think it came out okay, even though it was an afterthought. I think I think it worked out okay. But if it looks strange to anyone else, that's because it was an afterthought. Please forgive me. I'm only human. This is how the painting came out. It was a lot of fun to paint. If you have any questions about the technique, drop them down in the comments. I would really like to thank you all for watching my video. And if you liked it, then hit that like button, maybe the subscribe, and maybe even leave a comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!